Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Soccer Sofa, hosted by myself, the Stud.
And me, the horse.
This week we've got a sensational interview with a player who's amassed nearly 500 top-flight appearances. Add into this a Champions League winners' medal, a Premier League medal. He's been managed by Sir Alex Ferguson and had the privilege of playing alongside players such as Roy Keane, Giggs, Beckham. Looking forward to this one. Roll VT!
Sheringham, Scholes, Solskjaer. It's a good save, but Chadwick's going to score. And Martin will be disappointed he didn't hold on to it. And a goal against the balance of the match. But wouldn't you know it? A quick break. Nigel Martin, who's had precious little to do, couldn't hold the shot. And Chadwick was there. Reacted much quicker than anyone else, and Manchester United lead in a match in which they had played really very poorly. Couldn't recover his ground. Nigel Martin, Chadwick's second goal of the season.
Hey guys, welcome back. This week we're lucky to be joined by Luke Chadwick. How you doing, Luke?
Yeah, all good, thank you.
How's lockdown treating you?
Yeah, it's been okay. Obviously, it's the weather's not great this week, but while the weather's been fine, it's been okay. I live in quite a small village, so you don't really realise the enormity of the situation apart from what you see on the news and in the papers every day. So it's a terrible, terrible time. But at the same time, it's given me a bit of time with the missus. I've got two teenage boys who I probably wouldn't see as much if we weren't locked down. So I think we're all ready to go back to normal now, that's for sure.
Because you've spent so much time with the missus, you're happy to give us an hour of your time now?
Yeah, as long as you want. As long as you want.
Good man. Well, thank you for joining us.
No worries.
So, Luke, a good place to start would be what you were like as a youngster. I think I'm right in saying you grew up in a small village called Meldreth near Cambridgeshire.
Yeah, that's right. A small, tiny village sort of on the Cambs, Hertfordshire border. So it was a quiet little place where lovely scenery. We had a small little council house, but fortunately we had a massive garden at the back of it. So I had plenty of space to play a lot of football with my dad and my brother and get out there a lot. I think that were my earliest memories of kicking ball about in my back garden.
And what were you like at school? Did you enjoy your time at school?
When I was first started school, I was told by my mum that I never used to stay in there. I think I always wanted to go home. I was quite a mummy's boy as a little lad, and I never wanted to leave her at the school gate. So it was always a struggle to get me into school. But after a while, I started to enjoy it. I never really done enough throughout my schooling life to get really educated or get qualifications. It was always about the football, which probably is a bit of regret of mine now.
Yeah, so would it be fair to say your mind started wandering onto football field, thinking that that was going to be your job, and perhaps the classroom took a slightly lower, was lower down on your priority list?
Yeah, definitely. I think from quite an early age, I just always assumed I'd be a footballer, not in an arrogant way, but I didn't really have any doubt in my mind. Like I mentioned, I was from a real small area where the standard of football probably wasn't incredible, and I was always the best player really, which obviously gave me that confidence that I would go on to be a footballer. So certainly my education took a backseat. Probably at the most important time in my education at 14, 15 is when I signed for Man United and thought I was the top dog around the streets of Meldreth where I lived, and certainly then I just sort of gave up and didn't really put the effort in that was required to get good grades in my GCSEs.
Do you think you could have been supported better through that process, being offered contracts from world famous clubs?
Yeah, I think definitely looking at how it is now, I think the kids are much better support with their education. They probably don't think it, but they are sort of really pushed to do it, and they have to do it. Back in my day, many, many years ago now, I think it was just seen as the football. So although I probably didn't get the support. I don't think anyone did in that sort of day and age.
Right, and you said your first contract was Man United. I thought Arsenal slipped in there at some point, and you had a time on the books with Arsenal.
Yeah, so I was at Arsenal as an under-13 player, so I went and played in the centre of excellence there. It's not how it is now with the academies. It would just be, we'd go and train there once a week, and that'd be at Highbury. There was a little indoor pitch at Highbury at the back of one of the stands, so I used to go there. I think it was on a Wednesday night, and I'd either get the train to Finsbury Park and go there, or my mum would drive me over there. It's an incredible football club, Arsenal, but I don't think I ever loved going that much. I was more comfortable sort of staying at home, playing with my mates rather than go there. So I remember one time my mum's car broke down on the way, I think at Baldock, on the way to Arsenal, and she was absolutely fuming, but I was buzzing that I didn't have to go and all the way there to train and then come all the way home and have school in the morning.
Yeah, it's quite a way, really, Cambridge to Finsbury Park. Were there so in that side of 13-year-olds, there was obviously Mini Chadwick. Were there any other mini superstars in there?
There was one who was an absolute world superstar. He played left wing at the time and probably didn't. He was a very good player, but didn't really stand out. But it was Ashley Cole was in the same team, and he went on to have not a bad career when it all turned out. That's for sure.
Yeah, that is true. Of course, if you were playing internal matches, you would have been up against Ashley Cole.
Yeah, he used to play left wing back then, so I used to be a striker as well. So, times certainly changed as we moved through our careers. But there was also the goalkeeper in that team was Stuart Taylor, who played a few games for Arsenal and had a career in the game. And I think the year below would have been Jay Boothroyd, who also had a good career. And I think he might still play today out in Japan or somewhere like that. I think I read somewhere.
Yeah, it's crazy how many miles footballers seem to do to keep going in the game. And then, of course, Man United came along, still quite a long way from Cambridge. Can you talk us through the process of getting scouted and signed up for United?
Yes, so at the time I was playing, back in them days, you start playing for like your area team on a Saturday. So I'd play for Cambridge schools on a Saturday against other areas and then play for Arsenal on a Sunday. And it was at Cambridge schools where I was scoring a lot of goals and sort of got a bit of a reputation in the schools teams. And that's where Man United sent a scout, Ray Medwell, God rest his soul, incredible man. He's the man that scouted me. And I went up to Manchester one school holidays, a half term, I think it was. And I was a real quiet, shy boy. And I think that's why I didn't really enjoy going to Arsenal, because I didn't know anyone and I never got to know anyone that well, really. But the second I got to Manchester United, we stayed in a hotel called the Castlefield Hotel. There's probably about another 15, 16 boys of my age, like gifted players from all around Great Britain, come together and get trialled by the club. And he was just made to feel so special. It was such an incredible environment that even as a quiet, shy lad, I just felt part of it straight away and absolutely loved it from the second that I went there. And I played on trial for the week. We trained with the scholars, trained amongst ourselves. Then it ended in a game against Nottingham Forest at the end of the week. And then we went home. But when I got home on the train back to Meldriff, my mum picked me up from the train station and said that Sir Alex Ferguson had phoned her up and asked if I'd signed schoolboy forms. So as soon as you hear that, there was definitely nowhere else that I'd ever signed for.
And he'd actually come and watched you, hadn't he, I think?
Yeah, so he was at that game, but like I think we all saw him and there was a bit of buzz, but like we didn't speak to him or meet him that day. But to know that that was the genius of Sir Alex Ferguson. Really, he knew everyone. He treated everyone so well, whether it be the dinner ladies or the kit man. He just had the way of making people want to work as hard as they could for him. As a first team player, I'd be at Carrington in the canteen and there'd be academy boys under 10 and 11 there, and the manager would come in and he'd know every one of their names, he'd know their parents' names, he'd know where they'd come from. And I think them small details as a young boy mean so much. And I think that's why United got the pick of all the the young lads back then because of the environment that was there.
Yeah, what an excellent role model for you to see as well, treating everybody with respect.
Yeah, definitely. I think them values that are put into as a young boy at Manchester United, or whoever you are, whatever staff member you are, especially at that time, it meant everything. The person they were developing meant just as much as the football players that they obviously developed as well.
And of course, back then, I wouldn't say you were in an era that was very much doing lots of jobs and cleaning around the stadium and working for the first teamers. But I think there was still an element of that. Were you linked up with any pros as their kind of, I'll call you sidekick, but that's probably a bit generous, sort of support person?
Yeah, I think I was still probably at the back. So we were worked hard, that's for sure, off the pitch. So we'd be in charge of cleaning everything. I would think the two players I cleaned the boots of, Gary Pallister and David May, a couple of centre halves. So I'm not sure I got stuck with them. I was, when I got up there, probably a bit sloppy with that, but was told in no uncertain terms that their boots were to be cleaned every morning. We used to have to make sure the whole Cliff training ground was spotless. Occasionally the gaffer had come down, the first team, Sir Alex had come down and check it, and if he found any dust anywhere, he'd go absolutely mad at us, and we'd be there another hour making sure that everything was spick and span.
It's such a shame that that's gone from the game. I know whether or not it's correct, it's the right thing to do is questionable, but what a grounding it must have been for you. Yeah,
and I think a lot of it there was probably times where we were worked a little bit too hard with what always expected to do. But I think what is a shame that's missing a lot now is sort of the boot boy and cleaning players' boots. Because I think it's an incredible opportunity to be around and interact with first team players at a young age, which I think is lost to the game a little bit when the young lads don't do the first team players' boots.
Don't they give you a Christmas tip or something? Did you ever get a tip for your boot cleaning skills?
Yeah, I think I got, once I got into it, I don't think I would have got one if I kept going the way I started, but I think I got 50 quid off both of them, which back then was probably the same as we were getting paid a week. So it doubled the wage. So a few presents to take home for Christmas.
Definitely. And of course, I'm guessing you would have moved away from home and you would move into digs as a YTS player. Who were you rooming with, or not rooming, housing with, or house sharing with at the time?
So I lived, when I moved up to digs, it was a little terraced house on Littleton Road. It was just the same as what the houses looked like on Coronation Street. I remember that being in my mind. And there was just two of us. It was a lad called Jason Hickson. The guy that I shared with, incredible man, John Lancaster, his grandson was Phil Bardsley, who's a few years younger than me, but he just lived up the road. So it was an incredible time. A lot different to living in a little village in Cambridgeshire, that's for sure.
And during that time, you were in the Manchester Reserves or the youth team. Who were you in that squad with?
So in my team, the same year as me, the top player would have been John O'Shea. He came probably 6 weeks late, because I think in Ireland they'd done their exams at a different time. So he'd come and joined us 6 weeks after we started. Paul Rachubka was our goalkeeper. He had a career in the game. Michael Stewart was a really talented lad. He was a central midfielder. I think he played for Scotland. The year above me, there was Dave Healy, who was an incredible finisher. Richie Wellens, who's a manager of Swindon now. He was a brilliant player, central midfielder. And the top man in that group was Wes Brown, who was always sort of had a bit of an aura about him. Even as a young boy, I think they knew that they had something very special there. Year below would have been Danny Webber, Bojan Djordjic, who had a career in the game, and Jimmy Davis, God rest his soul, who got taken from us so too early. But he was a really talented young boy as well.
Do you get to knock around with the first team players at training, or are you around the first team?
You certainly were at the Cliff, because it was such a real tight environment, and the changing rooms were right next to each other. It weren't a big building like there is today. So you were always in and around them. I think it's slightly different now in terms of you try and avoid the first team at all costs. Back in my day, you wouldn't want to sort of upset them or do anything like that. I think it's a lot more relaxed now, but it was an incredible, like as young boys, to be sat at a canteen and on the table next to you was Roy Keane and David Beckham. It just felt like it was so close. What you could achieve was so close. Well, I think we may have lost a little bit of that now with some youth teams train at different sites altogether than the first team players.
And who did you look up to? Who was like the idols? Was there anyone that you were just in awe of when they walked in?
I think it was the likes of Beckham, Giggs. I think it's probably like all them class of 92, because I think they gave them younger boys like myself coming through that the opinion that it is possible. These lads were in your shoes 5-6 years ago and look what they've achieved. So I think we always obviously looked up to all the players, but it was them boys that had come through the youth team that we were trying to aspire to be.
Fair play. They're not bad role models to look up to on a daily basis, are they, to be fair?
No.
And during that time as well, you made your debut for England. I think it was under 18s in 98.
Yeah, so we went away. I think there was 3 of us, me, Richie Wellens and another lad, Lee Roach, went away to do trials to get in the team. And I'd done really well in the trials and players. I was always like amazed to get in the England team, to be honest, because I went for schoolboy trials. That was a big thing when I was at school because the games were on the telly on Sky Sports. There was a chance to be on telly, and I'd never really done that well in that. So to get in the England squad at under 18s was an incredible feeling, and it was a great team as well. The likes of Steven Gerrard, Francis Jeffers, Richie Wellens. There's some John Terry. There's some real brilliant players in that group, and it was a pleasure to be in it.
Again, they all went on to amazing careers as well. And then at 19, I think it was 1999. If I'm not mistaken, it was a Worthington Cup game. You got the call up from Ferguson to make your Man United debut. How was that? How did the experience go?
Yeah, it was about, I think, like the week before the game, there was a buzz because everyone knew that the manager played a lot of the young boys in them early rounds of the Worthington Cup. So we all thought we had half a chance of being involved. And then we got the ones that were playing, got told the day before. So we stayed behind and trained at the Cliff. Usually the youth team would go off to Littleton Road and train there. So it was, I remember walking back to my digs from the Cliff with a big smile on my face, you're sort of thinking this is what it was all about. When you're a kid, all you want to do, one game would be enough just to play one game in professional football, let alone for Manchester United. So it was obviously nervous and excited at the same time.
And how was that first team talk? Because even though it's, for want of a better phrase, a weaker team, because it was the Worthington Cup, I presume Sir Alex still gave the team talk.
Yeah, Sir Alex, he was still in charge of the team. To be honest, I think you're so young and naive and just absolutely buzzing. I'm not sure I took that much of the team talk in. So I just went out there to be on that pitch in such an incredible stadium, Villa Park. And I remember after the game, like the manager, he didn't go mad, but he was saying, don't think it's acceptable to, but even hearing that, it was, I think me, Dave Healy, John Green, and we still just had smiles on our face or smiles inside because we'd played a game for Manchester United, which was obviously an incredible feeling.
Did anyone get the hairdryer at half time in the first game?
No, I don't think so. I think it was all quite calm. I think it was always quite a big ask because Villa we were really weak, not weak, but we had a really strong team out and Villa were at their strongest. I remember Dion Dublin was playing for Aston Villa, who was a massive hero of mine growing up watching Cambridge United. So it felt really surreal standing close to him on the pitch. So it was that made it even more special probably. And
then you also got called up for the under-21s then. I think it was Howard Wilkinson. So your performance for Man United, your performances in the reserves and your performance at the under-18s got you that call up for Howard Wilkinson. I think it was Luxembourg.
Yeah, that was
5-0 drubbing.
That was a strange... I sort of come home from training and I was an absolute avid fan of teletext at the time. There was no internet, so I always used to go on the teletext to read the football news, and it said England under 20. I didn't even know anything about it. I saw on teletext that I was in it, and I couldn't believe it really, because the squad was full of Premier League Championship players. I'd not played a game for anyone, but Howard Wilkinson was the under-18 manager, and he was probably the biggest fan of a manager that I've ever had. He used to just sort of love it when I had the ball and tell the players to pass it to me so I could run with it. So it was obviously, if he didn't move from the under-18s to become the under-21 manager, I'm pretty sure that I wouldn't have been in that squad so early.
What an experience. I mean, it's funny you say that about teletext as well, because we had Michael Ball on a couple of weeks ago, who played in that team with you. And he said he found out about his call-up through teletext as well.
Yeah, because I think all we'd get back then, it was like, we had I think mobile phones were about, but they weren't really used. So we'd get a letter come through the post that would tell us that we were in the squad and where to meet and whatnot. So the news used to come out first on the teletext or the newspapers before you even knew about it.
But I'm sorry, because I'm just going to look at another screen here, but I just want to go through this team. So England under 21, Nicky Weaver, Danny Mills, Michael Ball, Jamie Carragher, Matthew Upson, Gerard Lampard, Chadwick Hendry, Heskey Jeffers, and on the bench just a little Jermaine Defoe. It's not really a bad team, that, is it?
No, I feel like I turned up there. All the lads said, I didn't know what to do. So I had a shirt and tie, a Man United suit and all that. And all the other lads turned up in tracksuits. No one had a clue who I was, I don't think. And then we went down the training the first 2 days. I'd done fine in that. And then, like, Howard Wilkinson announced the team and announced I was starting. And I was thinking, God knows what the other lads thought. But I actually had a really good game when I started there. But I played England under 21s before I played any Premier League games.
Just about to say, because obviously you've got now this reputation where you're playing for England under 21s. Obviously, you're a very, very promising youth talent. And then you come back to Man United, and Man United sent you off on loan to, I think it's an affiliated club, isn't it, Royal Antwerp? They send a lot of their players over to Antwerp. How was that experience? I think that was 99, 2000, was it?
Yeah, it was absolutely loved it in Antwerp. I think I went after my second season as a scholar. When I come back, I think Man United were expecting me to really push and be in the first team squad, but I didn't perform particularly well in the early part of that season. And then they thought it'd be a good idea for me to go and get first team action. And I was delighted really, because I was just in the reserves at Man U. So to go out to Antwerp, and I loved it. The atmosphere there, the fans were so sort of, it was like a proper European game where the firecrackers, the smoke bombs, that sort of thing. It was an incredible atmosphere. And I think I scored on my debut when I come on a sub, and the fans were all singing my name. And I think I become a bit of a fan's favourite there, which obviously as a young boy at 19 feels amazing. Living in a different country, you just feel invisible really. Antwerp's quite a lively, fun town, city as well. So there was 3 lads out there that could just sort of go and do what they wanted. No one knew who we were. So it was on and off the pitch. It was an incredible time, but also obviously a great life experience as well to live in a different country by yourself at such a young age.
You feel a bit, or did you feel at the time a bit less pressure because, you know, in Europe, players aren't followed. There's no paparazzi. Whereas, unless I'm mistaken, in the UK, it feels like we raise these young talents on a pedestal for the sole purpose of then knocking them down.
Yeah, it certainly felt no pressure whatsoever. Saying that, I didn't feel any pressure before I went out there, really, because I weren't anywhere near the first team. It weren't as if I was even in the squad or on the bench. I was just playing in the reserves, where it's obviously not that much pressure. I think just being at Manchester United, like every day, so much is expected, whether in the youth team, under 16. So it was a bit of a release of that, I think, where it was just a case of just go and play football with. You didn't know any of these people apart from a couple of lads that you were there living with. So it was an amazing experience, and fantastic people at Antwerp as well who looked after us so well.
And I think, unless I've got my stats wrong, you scored 1 in 4. Which is obviously quite impressive. So How did you then feel when Man United called you back? Because at the end of that season, they called you back for the next season, didn't they?
So I went out there one set for the last 3-4 months or maybe a little bit more than that of the first season when we was in the Belgian second division, and we ended up winning the Belgian second divisions. And I come home for the summer, but then Man United sent me back out there for the start of the next season. So I was out there playing in the Belgian first division, which was again obviously a step up in quality. Played some fantastic teams like Anderlecht and Club Bruges, and then I think it was October time, I got the call to say United wanted me to go back to England. And that, when I got told that, I was absolutely gutted, because I was flying in Belgium, playing really well, scoring, starting games every week. And I thought I was just going back to Manchester to be part of the reserve team squad again. But when I did get back, I was sort of thrown straight into the first team. And we had another Worthington Cup game at Watford, which I started and played really well in that. And then ever since then, I was just in and around the first team squad for the remainder of that season.
And then, of course, really your time at Man United kicked on from there. I think there's probably one standout moment was your first sending off against Liverpool in a local derby. I mean, what was that like? Yeah,
it's a scary moment. I don't know how I got in the position of being the last defender, because the position I played was obviously a forward player. We were chasing the game. I think Danny Murphy had scored a free kick, and then I think it was near the end, and I ended up running back with Vladimir Smitsa. I mean, to this day, I don't think I should have got sent off, because he was sort of he could have just run away from me, but he sort of had hold of me. But once I heard the referee blew the whistle, I knew exactly what was coming. So then I obviously went into the dressing room, didn't know what to do, so just sat there, and I was just thinking, I think Jaap Stam might have been in there, because I think he might have got injured in the game. And he said, "Oh, what's happened?" And I said, "Oh, I've been sent off." And he was like the sort of player I was. I think he was quite surprised that I'd been sent off, because I'm not one to really get in them situations. So he said, "Oh, it'll be okay." And I was just absolutely sort of so scared that the manager had shouted at me when he come back in. But they all come back in and nothing was said, fortunately.
As an Evertonian, I definitely don't think it was a sending off. I think we should have kicked him harder.
But then the funny thing is, we was training the next week, and it was Christmas time, and we had we was playing West Ham. I think it was on the New Year's Day. I think we was playing West Ham, and the manager called me over and said, "Oh, I'm going to start you against West Ham." He said they got Stuart Pearce playing, and I think with your speed, you might be out of causing some problems. And I said, "Am I not suspended, Gaffer?" Because I'd obviously researched it, because it was New Year, because I thought I'd have the opportunity of going back to Cambridge for the New Year. And he just looked at me and then sort of shouted over to his coach, "Oh, is Chadwick suspended?" And the guy said, "Yeah." So then I sort of missed the opportunity of playing against West Ham. Did I get that? Because I got that suspension. But it was a real strange one, the sending off. It was. I don't think I ever got sent off again in the rest of my career.
Is it the stereotypical image that we've all got of trudging down the tunnel and getting in the bath, or are you just sat there in a quiet dressing room thinking, what's happened here?
I didn't know what to do. Even like as I was walking off, it was against Liverpool. We were losing 1-0. The crowd gave me a real good, like a standing ovation, I think, because I'd been sent off against Liverpool or whatever. And I didn't know whether to clap back, because obviously I'd just been sent off. And I just walked down the tunnel. I just sat there in the corner that I was sat in. I didn't take my boots off or anything. I just waited. So it was the longest wait in the world for everyone else to come back in.
I can imagine. But anyway, then things. Well, to be honest, you were used as what I would call almost a bit part player. You seem to be used as a sub quite often. Do you think that was linked to your pace and the impact that you could have on games late on?
Yeah, definitely. I think that was the player that I was back then. Whenever I got the ball, I'd do my damnedest to try and run with it as fast as I could and get as high up the pitch as possible. So I think that was a good outlet at times if we were winning the game and wanted to get higher up the pitch, or if we were chasing the game, potentially try and make something happen. I was quite off the cuff in what I'd try and do. So I think it was not a bad player to bring on if you wanted to try and do something different.
I mean, you say the bit part player there, as Paddy's alluded to. but I think we've got to put this into perspective here. Your primary position was right wing or left wing, and at that time we had Ryan Giggs and David Beckham. So I think we have to put this into perspective here. It's not as if you're out of a team or playing bit part for second-rate players here, is it?
Yeah, like, to be honest, like, bit part player is exactly what I was. But even to be that was sort of, I'd still pinch myself every morning going into training to be a bit part player and probably the best squad in the world at the time. So that is exactly what I was a bit part player. But to have done that I find it incredible, really.
And then, of course, the next big sort of progression was Champions League football. I think your first game was Panathinaikos away. What's the Champions League night like? It must be an incredible experience.
Yeah, it was. I remember the first time, I remember coming on once, and I don't know if it was Sturm Graz, I'm not 100% sure, but I remember it was freezing cold, and I was sort of just coming through, and all the other lads were obviously on massive money. I was just on the same contract that I was on as when I was still in the youth team, and so the lads were saying that the sort of bonus, if you get on the pitch, you get a huge bonus if you win the game. And I remember the gaffer shouting to me, and there was about 30 seconds left, and we were winning 1-0. And it was probably the fastest I've ever moved in football to get over to him. Took on my tracksuit off straight away and was ready to go. I think I was on the pitch about 30 seconds. I didn't touch the ball, but I was absolutely delighted at the end because I'd probably got about half the year's wages in one game, I think.
3 minutes worth of work. And of course, you played in a quarter-final against Bayern Munich. I think that game finished 2-1. But again, you were brought on chasing the game. What was that like? What's the sort of conversation you have with the gaffer before you go on?
Yeah, I think that was certainly a case to just try and make something happen, really. I think we were desperate to score a goal. I think when I come on, I had a really good run and got in a great position where I probably should have had a shot, but tried to pull it across the goal. But it was like an incredible, to be part of a Champions League quarter-final was amazing. But then you talk about a bit part player. I remember in the dressing room afterwards, and everyone was sort of crestfallen because it was an opportunity to progress in the Champions League. But I probably didn't feel that myself that much. I was just absolutely buzzing because I'd come on in a Champions League quarter-final against Bayern Munich in the Olympic Stadium. So it was like a strange feeling for me, obviously not playing many games in the run-up to there, but just to have been part of it. I felt quite proud of myself to have done it, but the dressing room was sort of, everyone was really down in the dumps, like obviously they would be because they've just been knocked out of the Champions League. And
who was in that Munich team? Was that the Oliver Kahn, Philipp Lahm, Lisa Razou team?
I think it would have been Oliver Kahn. I think it would have been Lisa. I don't think Lahm was in it. I think it probably would have been before. I think I'm a bit older than Lahm. I don't think he would have been in it.
I was just trying to work out that team. So you're coming on at Bayern Munich running at Lisa Razou.
Yeah, it was. I remember after the game, one of their players come to me to ask if I'd changed tops with them. So I changed tops with them. I'm not a great collector of items like that, but then obviously got it home, looked at it, and it was actually Roque Santa Cruz.
Santa Cruz.
He went, yes, I've still got that upstairs, but he went on to have not a bad career himself.
He was one of Sam Allardyce's signings at Blackburn as well, wasn't he?
Yeah,
good player.
Yeah, very good player.
I bet Roque Santa Cruz has got the Chadwick shirt up on his wall now.
Yeah, I'm sure it's all framed up there. I'm surprised he's not asked me to sign
it. Okay, and then, of course, your first goal wasn't far around the corner. I think it was against Bradford to win that game 3-0. And it was an assist from no one else than David Beckham. How did that feel, getting your first goal?
Yeah, again, I remember kicking it in the goal and not really knowing what to do. Sort of, where do I go now? So I sort of ran towards the United crowd. Then thought, then turned around, see if anyone was coming to celebrate with me. It was an amazing feeling. I remember I came on at half-time in that game and had a good impact. We were drawing 0-0, and it was a bit of a flat first half. So I sort of went and played on the right. Giggs was on the left, and Beckham moved inside and played central, and I had quite a bit of joy on the right. Giggs was absolutely electric in the second half on the left, and we got some real joy in wide areas. I think Giggs scored. I think it was a goal where Teddy scored, where Gary Walsh had an absolute nightmare when he had the kick out and it hit his other foot, and it went straight to Teddy, who knocked it in the empty net. And then the goal, I made a real good run inside. I was pretty sure a player of David Beckham's ability would find me with a through pass, and he put the ball was absolutely perfect. And I had a touch and hit it with the old swinger, with the old left foot, but it still managed to creep in the goal. So it was amazing to score for United. After the game,
Sorry, no, you go for it.
After the game, I was considered too young for the trip, so I weren't allowed to go on they were off on warm winter training to Portugal. I think it would have been a bit of a booze up as well at the same time. So I was left behind to train with the youth team and the reserves while they went off on a jolly up straight after that game.
So would it be fair to say there was still a bit of a drinking culture in 2000, 2001?
Not at Man United. I think they probably had let their hair down maybe one night on that trip. But I think because it was so intense and there was so much football, there was no way you could have survived with a drinking culture in terms of Premier League on a Saturday or Sunday, then Champions League on the Tuesday, Wednesday. There was just two. There'd be like, when it was the opportunity, they'd always try and arrange a night out with the lads. I think that did keep spirits and morale up a bit, but probably that was once or twice a season because of how busy it was.
Did you ever feel that became a part of your career as a player? I mean, I've never read any bad media stories of you falling over outside nightclubs or punching bouncers, but did it ever become, well, unless there is any that you want to share with us, Luke?
No. I don't. It was never really a problem. Like, I'd enjoy a drink, but I don't think there was any ever. I'd like to think, unless I've forgotten about them, there weren't any incidents that I've got in trouble or anything like that. But I think other clubs that you were more free to go out and have a beer and that sort of thing, because it wasn't as intense as Manchester United. There wasn't as many games. You're not playing European football. So I think clubs do it, but at the right time and place. Probably even now the lads will go out for a beer occasionally, but not to excess, which probably happened. But I would imagine that was even before my time, where there was real drinking cultures around.
Yeah, sure. And we touched on it earlier with, did you get the hairdryer treatment from Alex Ferguson in your first game? Did you ever get it? Was there ever a point where he lost the plot with you on the training ground or at half time or whenever?
Going back now, I just said I never got in trouble for going out and that sort of thing. There was one occasion at Manchester United where we had our Christmas party. I think it was on the Tuesday, but it was a reserve team game on the Thursday that I was to play in. So the manager made it quite clear that no one in that reserve team's to go on the Christmas party. I ended up driving to taking a few of the lads there and hung around for about 45 minutes with a glass of Coke. Knowing what happened was later that night, it all kicked off. There was fighting and that sort of thing. And there was all pictures of the players arriving. Obviously, I was one of them players. We got in the next day. The gaffer had the hump, that's for sure, about what had happened. I was the least of his worries, but I just walked past him at the wrong time. And he sort of shouted at me in no uncertain terms that I was seen out and I'd be fined 2 weeks' wages for that. It was also the same day where we had our Christmas dinner at Carrington, where the staff would serve the players their dinner for a bit of fun. It happened every year. Obviously, the atmosphere was a bit frosty this year because of what had gone on in the Christmas do. And the gaffer had 2 bowls of soup in his hand, and he saw me sat down and slammed one of the bowls in front of me and told me that that'd be the most expensive bowl of soup I'd ever eaten in my life. So that was one time. And there was another time when he had a go at me because my time at United within the first team was coming to an end, and he wanted to send me on loan to Cardiff because he was Lenny Lawrence, his big mates with, was the manager there. I wanted to go to Reading because Reading was slightly closer to my home in Cambridge, and my wife was just about to give birth to our first child. So I made the decision and told him that I was going to Reading, and he certainly had a bit of a pop at me that day as well.
And we talk about the loan move to Reading because I think that was 2003. But did you go on the Manchester pre-season tour that season, or had you already signed for Reading? The 2003.
The years get the better of me. I went to Reading at the end of a season. I think it was the end of the 2002-2003 season. The last tour I went on, then after that I went on a season-long loan to Burnley. And then when I come back, I went on a pre-season tour with United to America. And then more or less as soon as I come back from America, I signed for West Ham permanently.
The reason I say that is because obviously your primary position was right mid. We've talked about that. And I believe it was the 2003 pre-season that Sporting Lisbon played Manchester United. And there was a famous little Portuguese teenager who your players all raved about and told Sir Alex to sign. I wasn't sure if you were part of that.
No, I think that would have been when I was off to Burnley. So I didn't travel on that trip. I do like to tell people even today that Ronaldo was signed as my replacement, so I can't complain too much. But I don't think too many of them believe me about that.
It's unbelievable. From what I understand, all of the players raved. And the question I was going to ask you, obviously you weren't there, was how do you feel as a right winger when the entire squad's raving about this young right winger telling Ferguson to sign him?
Yeah, I think my time was sort of at an end from that. Before then, probably when I went to Reading, I knew the time was up. After the first season, I sort of suffered with a few injuries, which resulted in a surgery to my hip and pelvis. And after that, I never really had that pace that I was talking about. That I'd lost a little bit of that, and I didn't have enough. I was sort of maybe harsh on myself, but maybe a bit of a one-trick pony where the likes of Beckham could drop into a right-back position and ping a 70-yard pass and affect the game that way, where Giggsy could come inside and find little spaces and do little things there, where I was really just about running with the ball as fast as I could. And I think without that, I was always going to struggle to have a long career at Manchester, or like an elite football club.
You say that, though, but you won a Champions League medal and you won a Premier League medal, so it wasn't all bad at Man United, was it?
Oh, no, I can't complain. Can't complain.
And then there's a famous quote you said you left Man United because you just wanted to play football. You didn't want the fame and the stuff that came with it. You just wanted to play football, but you were glad that you were at Man United. And as you alluded to before, it was Reading and then Burnley. And unless I'm mistaken, I would say Burnley was probably one of the most successful seasons you've had. Do you think that's fair?
I think in terms of sort of coming out, becoming more confident in myself, sort of enjoying football a little bit more. It was an incredible characters at Burnley, an incredible manager, Stan Turner, and his coaching staff, where it was just every day was real fun, really. It's put like a real step back from the pressures of Manchester United and being under the microscope to just really enjoying football and enjoying life, really, I think, from the Burnley season at Burnley.
And then I think Alan Pardew then took you to West Ham.
Yeah.
Is that right? Because he was so impressed from your time at Reading.
Yeah, Alan Pardew was a really good manager, enjoyed working for him. So I really jumped at the opportunity when West Ham came in because it's such a fantastic club, and playing at Upton Park is a real honour to have done that. The atmosphere there, particularly under the lights, is incredible. So I don't think from the time I left Man United, I think I was spent a lot of the following seasons trying to sort of redevelop my game from someone who was run with the ball all the time to being a little bit more clever, finding different positions on the pitch where I could be effective without running full pace every time I got the ball. So I don't think I performed consistently that well at West Ham, but it was great to have played at the club.
And then came a move to Stoke, which, if my research is correct, was quite a funny time because the ownership changed The management changed, and you were one of the few things that actually remained consistent.
Yeah, so I signed on loan for Stoke. I think West Ham, we got promoted, which was obviously incredible for the football club, but probably a bad thing to happen for me because they went then and signed Yossi Benayoun, who played my position, who was an absolute worldie of a player. So it was always going to be tough for me to get games then. So I went on loan to Stoke with Johan Boskamp was the manager, who was a Dutch manager, but he managed in Belgium the same time that I played there. So he knew me from there. And I really enjoyed playing for Boskamp. He sort of had me doing the things that I was good at and sort of helping me change my game. But that didn't really work out for him. And then Tony Pulis come in, who was like another brilliant manager, but a real amazing man, a wonderful human being.
And during that time, you enjoyed your time. You say you've got Tony Pulis. You've gone back to more conventional football because the philosophy of the two managers was very much different as well at Stoke. Is that correct?
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. Like Tony's sort of tactics were that we had real good shape and structure out of possession. So he openly said the hardest job in the team would be the 7 and the 11, the wide people. So you had to work as hard as possible out of possession and still offer something in possession. So I think it was a tough period in terms of physically, but because he built such good relationships with the players, like similar to Sir Alex, that you'd want to do and carry out the tasks that he wanted you to perform.
And then in 2007, you went off to Norwich, and I think you scored on your debut, got injured, and then you were out for a sustained period of time. Is that correct?
Yeah, I left Stoke because it was just, my family didn't really settle there. So we just had another child. So I had 2 young kids and my wife were back in Cambridge and the travelling was just too much. So when Norwich came in, I was delighted because it was so much closer to home. And then I was buzzing for the debut, playing the big East Anglian derby away at Ipswich, scored a goal, absolutely buzzing. And then towards the end of the game, I remember getting barged off the side of the pitch. And my first reaction was, that horrible feeling when you're winded. So I was trying to get my breath back. Then I realised I had a problem with my shoulder where it kept popping out of joint. So then I felt the pain of that and sort of managed to get it back in. And then Adam Drury, our left back, told me not to look down. So immediately I looked down and there was a big gaping hole in my knee where I'd hit the advertising board and I could see all the bone and that. And I sort of made me start reaching. And it was I've had 3 nights in Ipswich General Hospital because I was worried about the size of the cut and an infection and surgery there. So it was it turned from the dream debut into the nightmare debut quite quickly, really.
But saying that, they were obviously impressed because despite the injury, they still gave you a contract extension. I think it was in January and you didn't come back till March.
Yeah, I think that's testament to the club, really. I think a lot of the discussions with me moving to Norwich were about my family situation at the time, and for them to honour that contract despite me getting quite a serious injury is testament to the people. And it is I never got up to speed at Norwich. I never got myself fit enough. I never really recovered from that injury enough to have an impact there. But at the same time, the way I was treated and my family was treated in that sort of thing was absolutely, I couldn't speak highly enough of the board, the people at the club.
That's great to hear. One of the things that you've said, and I think you've said it 3 or 4 times now throughout the interview, is you've talked about travel. And I've got to ask this, okay? For someone who wanted to be closer to home and move back for family, didn't you used to make a bit of a second living through the travelling, i.e. playing cards? I think it was shitheads on the bus.
Oh, bloody hell, yeah. There was no money involved. That was all for...
Oh, don't be saying there was no money. Surely you're playing with footballers. Come on.
It was more than money. It was pride. Whoever lost the game, it was just like you just get someone's hand in your face for about 5 minutes. It was enjoyable times, but like the rest of the squad just thought they were on the bus with a load of kids. Really, they were playing cards for serious money up the back, and us young lads were at the front of the bus just playing for pride. Really.
Oh, I was waiting for a story where you were going to tell me you took 50 grand off Beckham on the turn of an ace or something.
I wish I did.
Perhaps if Stoke had chucked a game of shithead in for you, might have stayed there a bit longer. Right, and of course, then your next move was to Milton Keynes. I think you were signed by Roberto Di Matteo. And really, this is the first club that I would say you've played regularly at, and you're completing full seasons. How was that to be injury-free and to really get to know a place?
Yeah, it was great. Really. I think I was at Norwich at the time, and I just felt like it's time to just draw a line under this. I keep getting injured. I'm not getting any regular football. So I spoke to an agent, and we played MK Dons in a cup game for Norwich, and the stadium was amazing. And it just had a real good feel to it. And it was really close to where I live in Cambridge in terms of where I live. It's about a 45-minute drive. So again, to be close to home. So he spoke to MK. They were interested, and it just went from there. It was all so smooth. I felt so settled there. Great people again. Chairman was a great man. All lovely place for my wife, kids, family to come and watch football. And it all just felt a good fit, really, signing for Milton Keynes. And like you say, I had a good few years there where I was staying relatively fit and playing plenty of games.
And it was a good little team as well, because, I mean, Lewington, O'Hanlon, yourself, Jason Punchin, Baldock, Aaron Wilbraham. There was a decent little team there.
Yeah, we did it. Like some real good players there. And it was players that I really enjoyed playing with as well. We tried to play a nice brand of football that suited me as well. And it was, despite it was League One, it was still a real enjoyable league team to play in. So it was a real, loved me time at Milton Keynes, really did.
Do you think it might be fair to say, Luke, that your desire to live closer to home actually meant that perhaps you limited your earning capacity and even limited your trophy capacity from always wanting to be around the Cambridgeshire area or within a commute of that?
Yeah, I think possibly as my career went on, that was the case, definitely. But I think, like, it's easy to say I was never really in it for the money. It's easy to say, but I always just wanted to play football, really. It weren't really about how much I was earning. I had opportunities to leave Milton Keynes and get a load more money, but I was happy there and I was happy at home, really. So I don't know about the trophies. Like, you never know. You might have played for it. I think that's all sort of luck of the draw, really, of having a really good season at a club, particularly when you're outside of the Premier League. But you're probably right in saying that. But I don't think I'd change that if I went back in time.
Yeah, no. I mean, sometimes I hear people say I'm not in it for the money, but I genuinely believe it with you. And the facts don't lie. You are generally picking clubs that are relatively close to home, so there's a lot of truth in that.
Yeah, I probably regret it now because I've spent all my money and I've got nothing left, so I probably should have moved on when I had the chance. But I'm only joking. It was great time at MK Dons.
You never
talk
got
about
any pressure.
trophies. Sorry, you talk about trophies, but I think it's important that we note here that you've got one more Premier League trophy than Steven Gerrard.
Yeah, I get that said to me so much, really. I don't know. I think I mentioned it before. I don't know whether to take that as a compliment or it's a shout of even Chadwick's won a league, but Gerrard ain't. But I'm happy to have it. So either way, I'm happy.
Your famous tweet, you responded, I think it was about 2015, you responded to the tweet describing yourself as a journeyman in response to that. I think that's a bit of an insult, but fair play to you. You've got something that every boy aspires to have in their locker.
Yeah, I don't think like journeyman's a derogatory term, really, because I did play for a number of different clubs and did have a journey, but I loved the journey. Like I said, I certainly didn't earn as much money as Steven Gerrard. Certainly was nowhere near as good a player as Steven Gerrard, but I played professional football, which was what I wanted to do from a little boy, which is obviously to say that at 39 years old that you have done what you dream to do is an incredible thing to be able to do, and something I'm really privileged to say.
Well, whilst you were at MK Dons, you played under some quite big names, as in Paul Ince, Di Matteo. I mean, Carl Robinson's quite a big name for League 1 and 2 football. How was it working with those guys?
Yeah, great manager. Robbie was really a quiet guy. He's got real tactical knowledge. He had Eddie Newton with him, who was another former Chelsea player who done a lot of the training and done a lot of the communication. But when Robbie spoke, everyone definitely listened because he knew what he was talking about. Paul Ince was I loved playing under Paul Ince. We didn't do that well when he was a gaffer, but he was one of my heroes growing up. I loved the way he played. I remember his first training session, he was joined in and we played a little game, and he was about to take a shot with his left foot, and I just came in from nowhere and absolutely smashed him, and he was just lying on the floor, and I thought, oh my God, what have I done here? And I just sort of put my hand on his shoulder to see if he was okay. He turned around, he had a big grin on his face, and he said, I effing love that. So he just loved that sort of thing. So every day in training, it was a battle. We had to train how we played. And it was, I loved him. I loved Paul Ince. He didn't work out from the second time around at MK Dons, but what a guy. And then Carl came in, and me and Carl are a similar age. And what Carl had to do is be a fantastic person and build brilliant relationships, because he didn't have the playing background of Paul or Robbie to fall back on, and he done that so well, and I think Carl's got great things ahead of him in the game.
Yeah, I mean, Carl was the assistant, I think I'm right in saying, and then promoted to manager. I mean, how does that dynamic change? If you're a similar age, I imagine as assistant you were perhaps slightly on the friendship level with him, and then he becomes manager, and perhaps you can't do that. Is that the case?
I think Carl sort of got a lot when he had the opportunity to get the job, and he sort of had a few games to see how he'd done. He got a lot of the senior players together, and sort of what you've just alluded to there, spoke about that sort of thing and built a real good, firm relationship. A bit of genius that he done was bringing John Gorman, who's one of the most amazing people I've ever met in football. So he had that experience side with him too, and they done a great job together at MK, along with the other assistants that ended up coming in with Carl as well, Mick Harford, Gary Waddock, who were, again, he picked his assistants really carefully and really well to make sure that they had that right. Both had different strengths to bring the club forward.
And then we're getting through to 2013, and your appearances are starting to drop off a bit. Are you starting to realise that perhaps the end is closer? Yeah,
certainly the legs weren't what they once were. It was always my dream to play for Cambridge United. Been a fan of Cambridge United since I was about 5-6 years old. I went to the game, and I always said I'm going to play for them at some stage in my career. So I thought that was a perfect time. MK had younger players coming through that could do the job as well as me. I could have stayed at MK probably for another couple of seasons and been a bit part player, but Cambridge were up the top of the league that year as well, and it just felt like a right time to jump on that and try and be part of something incredible. So I actually was the one that contacted Cambridge and sort of said, I want to play for you. Do you want me to play, sort of thing? So it was probably one of the strangest transfers in football history, that one, I would imagine.
It's unbelievable to see a player who goes, do you know what, forget the money, forget that, I want to go to Cambridge because that's where I want to be.
Yeah.
It's great.
A part of that was because they were doing so well at the time as well. We used to walk around the town with my missus and kids, and at the town hall, I'd say one day I'll be stood up there with a trophy for Cambridge United, and there'd be all fans down there. And it just seemed right. Cambridge were like second in the league. Their only one went up, and I just wanted to give them a little bit of a push, a little bit of a help, and see where it got us, really. And it ended up working out absolutely amazingly.
There's two things I've got to say here. For Milton Keynes, though, they allowed you to go on a free. Was that mutual because they knew you were achieving one of your dreams, or was that for want of a better phrase, were they just happy to release you from the squad?
I think because I'd worked so hard for Milton Keynes, I think they sort of felt that they owed me something if I'd asked them to. I don't think they ever would have stood in my way. I explained to them in detail why I wanted to do it and what I want to do, and they were absolutely behind me because I'd done well for them over the years. So it was a chance for them to give me something back as well, which I'm obviously forever grateful for.
And you achieved your dream. You got promoted to Cambridge, and then it's like a fairy tale. All of a sudden, Cambridge get drawn against Manchester United in the 4th round of the FA Cup, and there you are going back to Old Trafford.
When the draw came out in the house, it was absolute bedlam. We were shouting, screaming. It was unbelievable to get the draw. Cambridge at home, and then Man United came out. It was, like I say, what dreams are made of. And then obviously to get the draw at the Abbey and then go back to Old Trafford. And then I didn't know it at the time, but when I came off, I started the game at Old Trafford and got subbed off. That ended up being the last game I ever started in professional football to end a career. I didn't know at the time, but it ended up being the last one. So it's a nice story to tell.
It's a great story. And you say you've got teenage kids now. Did you take the kids back to see Daddy play at Old Trafford?
Yeah, they were all up there. I had them on when we got promoted to at Wembley against Gateshead. I got them over the barriers, so both of them were on the pitch. But then the steward told me that I had to get them back off the pitch quite quickly. But they managed to be on the pitch at Wembley, so it was. They're both so coincidentally. My eldest son he's 17 now, and he's a scholar at Cambridge United. He's a goalkeeper, so God knows where he got that from. And my youngest, he's a centre back, and he's going into his under 15, and he's at Cambridge United as well. So there's certainly a family full of Cambridge United fans, that's for sure.
You must be proud as punch.
Yeah, I think football can be such a horrible game, particularly when you get into that professional environment. But while the best thing for me is that they smile while they do it. I think if once that stops, the chances of becoming a footballer are so hard that might. But as long as they're enjoying their journey, then that's what makes me happy, really.
Superb. And I've got to ask this: was there a bit of favouritism? Because in 2015, weren't you appointed as one of the academy coaches there? To
be honest with you, this is the gospel truth. The youngest one weren't in it at the time, so I had a big say in getting him into it. But to be fair, since he's performed incredibly well, so all credit to him. But the other one, I can't take any credit for him.
I love the honesty.
And of course, we're moving closer to now. And one of the things I couldn't help notice when you gave us your email address was it's at the Football Fun Factory. What's the story behind the Football Fun Factory, and what's your role in it?
So that's the organisation I'm involved with now. I finished playing football, and like millions of other professional players, really struggled, didn't realise what it was going to be like finishing football, and didn't really know what to do. Ended up falling into coaching. I never really dreamed of being a coach, and got a job at Cambridge, which was fantastic at the time. But I never really saw it as something I'd do for the rest of my life. I was just sort of floating along, and then had the opportunity to get involved with a Football Fun Factory, which is an organisation, as the name suggests, about making football fun. So it's run for programmes for children from 2 to 12 years old, and it is all about. It's not about getting kids into academy football. It is purely about having fun and using football as a vehicle to promote really positive life skills like teamwork, communication, sportsmanship, that sort of thing. So it's a lovely thing to be involved in. And I went from coaching under 18 players at Cambridge United to doing sessions for 2 and 3-year-olds, which was completely out of my comfort zone, but probably the best experience I've ever had in coaching, because the smiles are so big on their faces. When they go, they're saying to their mum that they can't wait for football training next week. And it's such a privileged position to be in. And particularly, I'm back now living in Orwell, which is a village next to Meldriff. I do sessions at Melbourne, where I went to school, at Bassingbourne, where my children went to school, and at Comberton, that's just up the road. So it's just giving something back to the local community where I sort of learnt my trade as a footballer and had my first experiences in the game.
Yeah, it's great to see, and I think it's incredible what you're doing with giving back. It's so easy to forget where you've come from, but you obviously haven't. And I don't want to labour too much on the next points. It's been covered a lot in the media, but recently you came out saying that it was difficult as a young player getting stick from the media for your appearance when you were younger. How would you, or could you have dealt with that differently perhaps then, or how could you have perhaps even been supported better through that difficult time?
Yeah, I don't think, like, I couldn't say that I could be supported better, because to be supported, you need to sort of ask for support or go and seek out support. Like, I sent that tweet out to try and sort of make people, don't get me wrong, I'm not any sort of god or guru who's going to say something and people will do it, but just try and raise that awareness of when you talk about your problems, it helps, doesn't it? I think it helps everyone, whatever your problems are. And in that situation that I was in, if I would have spoke about my problems, I probably would have felt a lot better about them, and I wouldn't have to keep it stuck in and keep it inside me for ages and ages. At the same time, like people say, what advice would you give yourself? My advice would be, go and talk about it. But I don't think even getting that advice, I would have gone and done it. I think it's so important that the education behind it, and we start speaking to younger people about what makes you feel, what makes you feel bad, what makes you feel good, and really learning about our emotional intelligence from a younger age, so we're more in tune with it, and then we understand what everyone's got. Mental health, it fluctuates up and down, but how do we keep it at an even keel and keep it in a good place? I think that was the reason I sent the tweet, was to try and raise awareness. So don't get me wrong, I didn't think at all that it'd get the coverage that it did, but it did. And I have had messages come and say, you coming out and saying that's helped me a lot, which is the best feeling I've probably ever had, including being a footballer and scoring a goal. Like, to hear that you've helped someone in some small little way is an incredible feeling. So that's made me feel quite humbled about that. The other stuff, like, that got spoke about a lot in terms of they think it's all over the programme, the people on it. Like, I've got no grudge to anyone like that. I went about trying to get in the media or get apologies off people. So I think it did get the original point that I was trying to make, maybe got lost a little bit with the press coverage that it got.
Yeah, and that's how it's come across. You were just putting a tweet out there to try and make people realise that we need to be conscious what we say about. I mean, being kind is very much a sort of a buzzword, certainly in the last few months. But yeah, and that really brings us back to today. And what's next for you, Luke? You seem to have a few irons in the fire, but will we see Luke Chadwick, the manager, Luke Chadwick, the full-time coach?
No, I don't think so. I think my passion at the minute is trying to grow this organisation, like the Football Fun Factory. Our aim is to be world leaders in what we do and have millions of kids all over the world running around in our blue and yellow kit and having incredible experiences playing football. I think in terms of being a manager, I don't think that was ever something that I'd really be in. I knew what I was like as a player, and I wouldn't like to manage me moaning all the time, that's for sure. So I'm really interested in this. And to be honest, I'm quite open, really. I always believed that I had to be a football coach because I'd played football all my life. But now there's so many other things that interest me and excite me that maybe there's other stuff that I'd be quite interested to do away from football as well. So I'm really excited about what the future is. It's probably the first time I'd say that since finishing playing football, really. But just to really have that sense of a new identity. I'm not Luke the footballer anymore. I'm Luke whatever I want to be. So it's exciting times, but God knows what's going to happen.
Well, Luke, we wish you well as you continue on your journey. And on behalf of the Soccer Sofa, thank you so much for what I personally feel was an incredible interview. So thank you very, very much for your time today.
No worries. A pleasure speaking to you guys.